Thank you all for coming. This is the second time that we're having Dr. Don Paulson speak. In November, he spoke to us about mining, and this time his presentation is on roads that changed the San Juan Triangle, picks, shovels, and pioneers. And he will give a detailed history about the collection of high elevation jeep roads that dot the San Juan Triangle between Ouray, Telluride, and Silverton, the colorful history of the $1 Million Highway, the toll roads developed by Otto Bears, and the lesser known trails such as Virginia's Pass and Dave Wood Road. Don Paulson lives in Ouray and is a curator of the Ouray County Historical Society. He has written articles and given talks on southwestern Colorado history. He recently published Images of the Southwest in Photography and Poetry with his wife, Beth. He has also published Mines, Miners, and much more, Peaks of the Uncompahgre, and Narrow Gauge Railroading in the San Juan Triangle. Previously, Don was a professor of chemistry at Colorado State University in Los Angeles for 36 years. Don enjoys nature photography, model railroading, hiking, and jeeping in the San Juan Triangle. Let's welcome Don.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to be back here again. I love to talk about southwestern Colorado, and so let's talk about the roads that were such an integral part of developing this part of the country. This is the San Juan Triangle. We have Telluride over here. I'm going to have to switch with, there we go. Telluride over here, Ouray in the north, Silverton in the south. And so this is the area, gold and silver, narrow gauge railroading, jeep roads, hiking. It's probably almost close to being heaven in this part of the world. So that's the San Juan Triangle, and we're going to be talking about roads that are in that area. So let's talk about what roads we're going to see today. First of all, we have Engineer Pass, which starts in Lake City and ends up just before on Highway 550, just before you get to Ouray. So here's Ouray. Here's Telluride, here's Silverton. Cinnamon Pass, which also starts in Lake City, down by Lake San Cristobal and into Animas Forks, north of Silverton. And then Stoney Pass, which starts all the way over almost in Creed and comes in Howardsville, just a short distance northeast of Silverton. Overpass from Ophir on Highway 145 over to the Highway 550. Red Mountain Pass, of course, which you're all familiar with. Black Bear Pass, probably one of the most dangerous roads in the entire country. Almost every year someone is severely injured or killed on that particular road. We also have Imogene Pass, starts again in Telluride, comes over to Route 361 down into Ouray. So we're going to talk about all those. And then we'll also talk about a couple other very interesting and lesser known roads. Okay, so the Utes, this was their homeland before all of us arrived on the scene and displaced them. And so if you look at 1830, you can see that the Utes had about 3/4 of Colorado. That was their range. And so since they were there for several hundred years, it wouldn't be surprising that all of these trails that I'm going to talk about that we think we discovered, I'm sure the Utes were using them for a long time. And so what does the Ute reservation look like today? Just a small portion in Utah and in southern Colorado. So the roads that we're going to be talking about have been traversed by people for several hundred years, and certainly the Utes were using those passes. So the traders, fur traders, that was the first incursion into Colorado by Europeans. The Spanish came and did fur trading and trapping in the 1600s, the French, the mid-1700s, and the Americans came in the late 1700s. And all were involved in fur trapping, which lasted until about the middle of the 1840s. All these trappers also traded with the Utes. And certainly these trappers and traders ventured into the San Juan Mountains, and specifically into the San Juan Triangle. But we have very little records. We have hundreds and hundreds of trappers all over this area and there's very little written information about what they did or how they did it. And why is that? And the reason for that is that trapping or trading in the Spanish territory between 1775 and the Mexican independence in 1821 was illegal. And so these trappers were not going to write down what they were doing and then have incriminated themselves by what they wrote. So the Spanish tolerated the trappers, but they had very harsh penalties imposed for anyone trading with the Native Americans, because the Native Americans were enemies of the Spanish. So let's talk about some of the Spanish explorations that came to this area. Juan Antonio Maria de Rivera made 2 trips into the San Juans in the 1860s. The first one was his trip in early 1865. He started in Abaque down in New Mexico, came up a little bit south of Durango, up to the big loop of the Dolores, and then came back. This is the San Juan Triangle. So he skirted the San Juan Triangle, but never came into that particular area. He did a second expedition in 1765, again coming from Abaque, south of Durango, Dolores, Norwood, up to Delta, down to Montrose, but again, no incursion into the San Juan Triangle. Then we've probably all heard of the more famous Dominguez Escalante expedition in 1776. They started in Santa Fe, went south of Durango, Montrose, all the way around, but again, they skirted around the San Juan Triangle. So the U.S. government expeditions, there were many of them, starting in the 1840s and through the late 1850s. This is the San Juan Triangle. And so again, all of these surveys and all these exploring parties just skirted around this area that we want to talk about today. The closest was John Fremont in his disastrous 1848 expedition. He arrived at the top of Stoney Pass right there, but never made it down into the San Juan Basin. Okay, the Baker expedition of 1860 and 1861, the first European Americans to actually enter the San Juan Triangle. In July of 1860, Charles Baker and 21 prospectors left the area around what is today Leadville to prospect in the San Juan region. Along the way, most of them were discouraged and went back to Denver. Baker and 6 others came into the upper Animas Valley via Cinnamon Pass. And they prospected in the summer, July through August. They were looking for placer gold. And of course, there isn't very much placer gold in the San Juan Triangle. It's all silver lode mines. But they were looking for placer because they were interested in how gold had been mined and discovered in California, which at that time was mostly placer mining. Baker left in September, but came back in October to claim a town site. Another explorer, George Howard, came into Baker's Park via Overpass in November with 60 men. And so during that winter, as many as 150 people might have been in the area a little bit north of Durango. In the January of 1861, Baker wrote to the Santa Fe Digest extolling the virtues of the area and predicting a large gold rush in 1861. And of course, since he said how wonderful it is and predicted it, it came about. About 1,000 people came back in 1861, but they found no placer gold, and all had left by the fall of 1861. Then the Civil War came along, and that people left for that, and so there was very little exploring in this area during the time of the Civil War. And the area became known as the San Juan Humbug, because everyone was coming in looking for placer mining. None was found, and so for the next decade, no one came in to the San Juan area. It had a bad name. It would be a decade before any significant number of prospectors returned to the Baker's Park. And by the way, Baker's Park, again, is the Silverton area. All right, so here's where the Baker expeditions in. Baker himself came over Cinnamon Pass. Here's Silverton, down here's Durango, Ouray, which didn't exist, is up here. So they came in over Cinnamon Pass to the Bakers Park area, and the other group that I mentioned came in from the south and over Bear Creek area. So these were the first explorations into the San Juan area, or the San Juan Triangle, Cinnamon Pass, and up which is today essentially the route of the Durango and Silverton Railroad. Okay, so here's the San Juan mining revival. In 1870, people started coming back into the area, and they came in two ways. They either came in from New Mexico in this direction, or they came up the Animas River from the Durango area. And this is Bakers Park, and this is the San Juan Triangle. Okay, how did they build roads? What did they do? Now remember, we're talking 1870s, so they used picks and shovels and wheelbarrows. There were no Caterpillar tractors, there were no trucks. They used horse-drawn graders. They used black powder with dynamite, and later they used air drills. You can see in that picture on the left there is a person using a compressed air drill. And those air drills were invented in the 1870s, and so they were certainly available to road builders. That picture on the left is a picture of the $1 Million Highway a little bit south of Ouray as it was being turned into a wagon road by Otto Bears in the early 1880s. On the right, you have the typical types of bridges that they used. This is a trestle bent holding up that part of the bridge. This is a pier. We have the logs stacked and niched and then filled with rock in the middle. Very primitive construction, and everything had to be brought in on the backs of mules, and lots and lots of men with picks and shovels. They used black powder, dynamite later. The problem was the roads were way too steep, and it was very difficult to get wagons over them. You would think, well, why didn't the counties build roads? Well, they had no tax base. There was no property tax. There was no taxes for roads. There was no way for the government to get any money to build them. And so most of the early wagon roads were toll roads. Some entrepreneur putting up his money or other people's money, building a road, and then charging a toll to try to recoup the money that they put in building the roads. Okay, let's talk about our first road. And this is Stoney Pass. Stoney Pass was the major route into the San Juan area from 1870 to 1882. How many of you have been on Stoney Pass? It's a great, great road. There's a couple problems with Stoney Pass, and if you've driven it, particularly if you've driven it in the early summer, you know what some of those problems are. The first problem is in the lower right-hand corner, and that problem is Timber Hill. A very, very steep, rocky section of Stoney Pass, and that's the area down here. This is where Timber Hill is. The second area is Pole Creek. In June and July, Pole Creek can be 4 or 5 feet deep. I've done Stoney Pass maybe 10 times, and I always do it in early September or late August so I can get across Pole Creek. The third problem with Stoney Pass is the descent into Cunningham Gulch, and we'll have more to say that in about a minute, but the road drops 2,300 feet in less than 2 miles. An exceedingly steep road. Okay, this is Timber Hill. I wish I had taken the picture right here instead of here, because right here it goes up in a direction like that. So that's the first problem, getting your wagon over that extremely steep road. Second, Pole Creek. This is Pole Creek the 1st of September, where it's very easy to cross it. I don't have a picture from July because I've never been there. And this is the drop, and let's just look at this. I'm standing on the road taking this picture. This is the road. That's the road. And it goes all the way down to there. So it drops 2,300 feet in less than 2 miles. So the pass was first built in 1872 by a Major Hamilton. The Ruffner Survey of 1873, Ruffner was a lieutenant in the United States Army in the Engineering Corps, and they surveyed the area, and this was Ruffner's statement about Stoney Pass. The ascent at Timber Hill is so steep that wagons have to be hauled by tackles hitched to the pine trees. By 1874, this 2-year-old road was in great disrepair, and this is what one traveler said about it. The road to Antelope via the Rio Grande is a fiction and a snare. It is a humbug of the first water, and has been the author of more profanity than any other evil will be endured. It is paved with the curses of the poor unfortunates who have climbed it, and it is darkened with the shadows of the equine ghosts given up on Timber Hill. Oh, sir, it is a devilishly bad road. But Stoney Pass was still better than coming in from the south. You had to wait 6 or 8 weeks longer to get in from the south than from coming over Stoney Pass. So between 1875 and 1879, the road was improved. Roadhouses were available for spending the night. Wagons would have to be let down the north side of the pass by snubbing. Freights could also be unpacked from the wagons and carried over the pass by burros. So not a particularly great way to get around. In 1880, 15,000 pounds of all of the steel front on this building, the Wingate Posey building, was carried over Stoney Pass in 1880. So if you wanted to go to Silverton, that was the way it had to go. You had to go over Stoney Pass. Okay, it began a slow decline in 1882 when the DNRG Railroad arrived in Silverton. The poor people continued to use Stoney Pass, but ore and freight wagons were a thing of the past. Reverend Spaulding came over Stoney Pass in 1883, and it took him 8 hours to get from Timber Hill into Silverton, and that's just a matter of 7 or 8 miles. This is 1910, the first automobile over Stoney Pass. So, not under its own power, but the first automobile to be hauled over Stoney Pass. During the period 1908 to 1910, attempts were made to improve the road. However, 3 dams along the route completed in 1912 wiped out the road, and so Stoney Pass sort of declined. This is a great picture from the top of Stoney Pass looking back toward Lake City. A truck road was completed in 1937 to reach the mines from the east, but by 1944 it was impassable. The Silverton Standard, 1941, a party of 5 people and a guide made the 28 miles horseback trip over Stoney Pass on Wednesday this week. It is said to be the first time this rugged pass has been traveled by either horseback or on foot in many years. In 1950s, they started the new 4-wheel drive over the pass, and it was completed in the late 1960s to the road we have today. Okay, let's talk about Cinnamon Pass. Cinnamon Pass starts in Lake City, down Lake San Cristobal, follows the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River, and ends up in California Gulch at Animas Forks Ghost Town. So let's talk about the history of that road. Nice picture looking toward the east from near the summit of Cinnamon Pass. The Ute Indians used it for centuries. It's named for the cinnamon-colored rocks on the pass. If you look at the top of the photo, you can see up here, and that pointer doesn't work very well, but there we go, the cinnamon color over there. In the 1860s, we said before, Charles Baker came over Cinnamon Pass to get into the Animas River. And in 1873, Albert Burroughs explored the area, establishing a settlement at Burroughs Park where people could stay who were going over Stoney Pass. In 1874, Otto Bears and Enos Hotchkiss built a wagon road from Saguache to Lake City, and an extension was built over Cinnamon Pass, but it was only good for pack animals, not for wagons. Rhoda and Wilson, they were half-brothers. Wilson was the topographer in the Hayden survey of the 1870s, and Rhoda was the assistant topographer. And Rhoda wrote a wonderful book about all of the experiences that he had working for the Hayden survey. Fantastic book, well worth the read. And this is what he said about Cinnamon Pass. How the people of Saguache ever expected to bring a wagon over this, I cannot see. So here's Cinnamon Pass, looking back from near the summit. We're looking down toward Silverton in this view. And in 1874, the U.S. Postal Service thought that any pass not crossing the Continental Divide was an all-weather pass. So this caused lots of problems. Cinnamon Pass does not cross over the Continental Divide, and so they let contracts for mail being hauled all through the year, and that caused a lot of problems. People snowshoeing over the top of Cinnamon Pass to deliver the mail. And as I said before, Hotchkiss constructed a wagon road, but when the war ran out, the wagon road was no longer maintained. So the first decade of the 20th century, only horses and pack trains came over Cinnamon Pass. In 1919, the Creed-Candle newspaper campaigned to have a good route built over Cinnamon Pass. And in the mid-1950s, it was upgraded to Jeep travel to the road we have today. Oh, Engineer Pass. It again starts in Lake City, goes by the mining community of Henson. Capital City, that's another story. The person that built a mansion there because he decided that this would be the capital of Colorado. Don't know how he figured that out. You've probably seen the remaining chimney, giant 100-foot chimney that you see when you go up the pass. The Empire Chief Mine is kind of a neat place. Unfortunately, the mill collapsed several winters ago. Engineer Pass, and then down into Highway 550. So that's Engineer Pass. Now let's look at the history of it. Here's a nice view from the top of the pass looking back to the east. When the Ruffner Survey came through in 1873, the people that were on the survey wanted to name what we now know as Engineer Peak. They wanted to name that Ruffner Peak. And Ruffner said, no, we are the Army Corps of Engineers, and it will be known as Engineer. So we have Engineer Pass and Engineer Peak from the Ruffner Survey. It's a deceptively easy road from the east. You can drive a low-slung Cadillac from Lake City to the top of Engineer Pass without any trouble whatsoever. And as soon as you start down the pass going to the west, then you have a real problem. The boys who own the gas station in Ouray haven't so much lately, but a decade ago, they were going up there 3 or 4 times in the summer to rescue somebody in a normal car who had driven from Lake City to the top of the pass and then stupidly started down. And you can get about a quarter of a mile before you're stuck. So the road was completed in 1877 by Otto Bears, linking Saguache with Ouray. The section between 550 and Mineral Point was upgraded in 1904, and a buggy trip from Mineral Point to Ouray, 11 miles, took about 90 minutes. So we had a pretty good road there in the early part of the 20th century. This is a picture. You can see Highway 550 right here, and this is the road, and I'm standing on the road. So you can see what kind of elevation change you have when you're driving on that road. It's a really rough road. From Mineral Point down to Ouray has just incredibly deteriorated over the last decade. Part of the problem is the racers and the other four-wheel drive vehicles that can drive 40 miles an hour on the road and just beat the potholes and make them deeper and deeper. This is what the road looks like today. This is just a little bit above Highway 550. It takes a little bit of maneuvering to get over that. Whoops. And here's a picture near the top looking to the west. Okay, let's talk about Overpass. This is the the little community of Ophir on Highway 145, somewhere right over here. Here's Telluride, and this is Overpass to Highway 550. That picture right here is taken looking upgrade in this section right here on the west side of the pass. Oops. There's a picture of what Overpass usually looks like or in mid to early June. It's one of the first passes to open in the summer. It was originally called the Navajo Trail. It was well used by Native Americans, and as we mentioned earlier, George Howard used it to access Baker's Park in 1861. So this is the approach to the pass from the west side. Here's the old road up here. I'm standing on the new road, and so they put in some switchbacks to erase that part. But crazy people still like to drive over that old section of the road. A crude wagon road was built over the pass in the mid-1870s. James Mountain built the Silverton and Overpass toll road in 1881. So the toll was $2.50 for a 4-horse team. Now that's at a time when a miner's salary was $3 a day, and that was a really good salary. People on the East Coast that were working in factories, they were making $1 a day. So the miners in the San Juan area were being paid well, but of course they had a very dangerous job. Anyway, $2.50 for a 4-horse team, 50 cents for a man on a horse, and 25 cents for each stock or pack animal. Use of the pass greatly declined after the completion of the Rio Grande Southern Railroad in 1891. Come on. That's good. Here we go. In 1906, the Telluride baseball team came over Overpass to play Silverton. This is Overpass in 1920. I like the nonchalant mule driver here sitting sideways on the mule, just kind of rocking along there. Okay, this is Overpass looking to the west from right near the summit. In 1923, the Telluride Journal campaigned for the opening of Overpass to automobile traffic, and the current four-wheel drive road was opened in 1953. All right, Imogene Pass, another of the wonderful passes that we have. So here's Imogene Pass starting in Telluride, going up. The pass is right here, and down to Highway 361 going into Ouray. So what's the history of the Imogene Pass? This is a photo from the top of the pass. There's a little peak to the east when this is the top of the pass right here. Telluride's way down here, Ouray's way over here. This is taken from the little peak that is to the east of Imogene Pass. The trail was built in 1880, to access Ouray from the Tomboy Mine. So the Tomboy Mine, which is over here, and you could get to Ouray from the Tomboy Mine. But it was only a horse trail, and it is the second highest pass in the United States at an elevation of 13,144 feet. It was named in the late 1870s for Imogene Richardson, who was the wife of Annie Richardson. Annie Richardson is famous for having helped Tom Walsh acquire the claims, which became the Camp Bird Mine. Just an aside, the original people who were working the Camp Bird area, they found this black sand, and they just were so angry at this black sand because they had to throw it all away to get to the silver. They didn't find very much silver. Tom Walsh discovered that that black sand was rich gold ore, and so he snuck up there with Annie Richardson and so quietly bought up all those claims. And of course, we know of Tom Walsh became a multimillionaire from the Camp Bird Mine. In 1897, L.L. Nunn built a 17-mile alternating current power plant line from the Ames power plant over Imogene Pass to the Camp Bird. At the time, that 17-mile power line was the longest power line in the United States. And Imogene Pass connected the upper Camp Bird with the Mears Road. So what we had, you could get from here, where the Tomboy was, down into Telluride by wagon. You could get from here, which was the upper Camp Bird, down into Ouray, but you couldn't get over the top of the pass unless you were on foot or horseback. Wagon roads, as I said, were built from the Tomboy to Telluride and from the Camp Bird down to Mears Canyon Creek Toll Road, but the trail between the Tomboy and the Camp Bird was not made into a railroad vehicle or to a road vehicle road until 1966. All right. So, in 1923, Charles Chase, who at that time was the former manager of the Liberty Bell mine and future manager of the Silverton Shenandoah mine, proposed a new automobile road. So let's take a careful look at this. So here we are in Telluride. We do the Imogene Pass Road to the pass, and just over the pass there was a road that leads down to the Ptarmigan Lake, which was the water supply for the Tomboy mine. And so what Chase proposed was just following this trail down to 550. And so we would have a really short way of getting from Ouray over to Telluride without going the long way around. Unfortunately, that never came to pass, but it was kind of a neat idea. Okay, Fort Peabody, which is that little knoll that's on top of Imogene Pass. In 1905, there were strikes in the mines at Telluride. Governor Peabody was the Colorado governor, and he sent the Colorado State Guard down to Telluride and put Buckley Wells in charge of it. Well, Buckley was the manager of the Tomboy mine, so we know where the governor stood on that. And Buckley built a little fort on top of that peak above Imogene Pass, and it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1905. This is what it looked like in 1910. This was a little cabin that the soldiers could stay in. This was the machine gun nest that they put up there to shoot at any miners who would try to sneak back into Telluride from Ouray. And it deteriorated over the years. This is what it looked like in 1950. This is what it looked like in 2004 when a few of us from the Ouray County Historical Society did some repair work on it. And then in 2010, a group in Telluride reconstructed it. So if you go to Imogene Pass and climb up that little hill, you can see what the soldiers' little hut looked like from the early 20th century. All right.
That's pretty cool.
Virginia's Pass. This is one of my favorite passes. This is Governor Basin. The Mountaintop Mine is up there. This is the Camp Bird. So from Governor Basin, you could take this, and there's Virginia's Pass right there. You could take this pass and go down into Telluride on a really steep trail, or go down into Telluride via the Tomboy. This was one of the best ways on horseback or on foot to get from the Ouray area over to Telluride. But it was quite the pass. Father Gibbons, in a book called Into the San Juans, which he wrote in 1908, he talked about his experiences in going over this trail in winter. The pass is over 13,000 feet, and he would go once a month from Ouray over to Telluride, and always used the Virginia's Pass, and he has some just harrowing tales in that book. Robert Livermore, who worked at the Camp Bird mine. So Robert works here, the Camp Bird mine. Every Christmas he would go over the pass to see his sister, who was married to Buckley Wells, who was the manager of the Tomboy. And in that book, again, they describe these people were probably a lot tougher than we are. I just can't, I had a rough time hiking to the top of Virginia's Pass. in August. I don't know what it would be like if you tried to do that in the winter. Okay, so this is a picture from 1890. This is a surveyor at what is called the Keyhole, which is the top of Virginia's Pass. Here I am with a bunch of friends in 2007. You can see Mount Sneffels to the right in the background, and it was quite a climb to get up to that. This is a view from Governor Basin. This is Virginia's Pass right here, and it's quite a torturous climb to get up there. And if you look at it from the other side, this is Virginia's Pass from Marshall Basin above Telluride. So this is the pass looking to the south, and that's the pass looking to the north. Tough people that did that in the winter. Okay, Black Bear Pass. It's also known as Ingram Pass, after the founder of the Smuggler Mine. And these are the famous switchbacks on Black Bear Pass. These switchbacks, which everybody's afraid of, that's not the problem. The thing that makes Black Bear Pass tough is what's called the Granite Stairsteps. And the Granite Stairsteps are right there. Now, these are kind of neat. You have to back up 3 or 4 times every time you go around. But that's not very bad. The Granite Stairsteps are the problem. So let's take a look at those. Okay, the road was first built in the 1880s to access the Black Bear Mine. And it's one of the most dangerous roads in the San Juans. Many, many people have been killed trying to drive a Jeep down it in a rainstorm. It fell into disuse early in the 20th century, and it was finally opened as a Jeep trail in 1859 through the efforts of the Telluride Jeep Club. Okay, this is the problem. This is the Granite Stairsteps. This is a picture that I took after my one and only drive over Pass. I had an Isuzu Trooper, and I drove up here and said, oh my God, what have I got myself into? There was a whole bunch of motorcycle guys standing right here with movie cameras ready to film me come down. So, after a bit, one of them walked up and he said, I'll help you down. So he walked backwards and told me which way to go. So, and here's a bunch of Jeeps going down the Granite Stairsteps in later years. Anyway, if it's raining, this is a horrendous thing, and right behind me is an 800-foot drop. So you come down here, you make a sharp right-hand turn, and if you don't make the right-hand turn, you're in real trouble. That's Black Bear. Okay, Dallas Divide, one of the easier of the paths that we're going to talk about. There's a neat little ranch house there at the top of Dallas Divide, which Ralph Lauren actually restored a couple of years ago. So Dominguez and Escalante, they used that pass, the Dallas Divide, in 1776. It was named by Ferdinand Hayden for Vice President George Dallas, the little community of Dallas that used to be north of Ridgeway, named after him, Dallas Creek, Dallas Peak, etc., etc. In 1882, Otto Bears built a toll road over Dallas Divide from the town of Dallas to Telluride with grades of only 10%. By the way, 10% grade, that means every 100 feet that you go horizontally, you go up 10 feet. And Mears finally used much of the toll road when he built the Rio Grande Southern over Dallas Divide in the late 1880s. Now, Dave Wood Road. Dave Wood is really an interesting person. He had an opportunity to make lots of money from the road that he built, and he gave the road away. Very unusual person. He had a freighting company called the Magnolia Route, and he would follow the railroads across Colorado. And he would the railroad would end here, and then his freight business would start there. The railroad would move some more. He'd move his freight business. So he just provided a way for supplies from the end of the railroad to get to further to the west. Here's an advertisement for his road. This is a picture of some of his wagons. And you can see it says here, Dave Road, Magnolia Route. So a big freighting company. And he used the 1882 Mears Toll Road from Montrose to the town of Dallas and then Dallas to Telluride. However, the road was in really bad shape over the top of Dallas Divide. And so the spring of 1884 had some very large rainstorms. Some of the roads were washed out and he couldn't move any freight. So he took his crews and he had them build a cutoff between Dallas and from Montrose down to the other side of Dallas Divide. And so the road went from Montrose over Horsefly Mesa and then down to Haskell's on Leopard Creek. And so this is the Mears Toll Road right here coming over Dallas Divide, and the Dave Wood cutoff came in here at Haskell's. He didn't operate it as a toll road, but donated the road to Ouray and Montrose counties. And the lower left, you can see some of his wagons on the Dave Wood Road. Whoops. In the girl on the horse right here is 12-year-old Evelyn Walsh, daughter of Tom Walsh. Interesting photo. Okay, the Dave Wood Road. Let's first of all, this is the Mears Montrose to Dallas toll road, and then from Dallas over Dallas Divide and down into Placerville. So this is the Dave Wood cutoff right here. Today, the Dave Wood Road takes this route, but the original route was over in this direction right here. So it's, say, 15 miles from Montrose to Telluride, and it was a much better road. Now, Otto Bears, one of the most fascinating characters that I've ever heard about. He was called the Pathfinder of the San Juans, and he built 450 miles of toll roads. There's a possibly apocryphal story that Otto was trying to take some grain from Saguache over a terrible road, and the wagon tipped over and the grain was on the ground, and he's standing there swearing and shoveling the grain back into the wagon. The lieutenant governor of Colorado came by and said, you know, for $5, you can go to Denver and get a permit and build your own toll road. And so supposedly, that's how Otto started. And eventually, he built 450 miles of roads. And we know those roads today. This is US 50, Montrose Gunnison to Salida. This is from Ridgeway. This is Highway 62. This is Highway 145. This is Highway 550. These are some of the roads. This is Engineer Pass. So many, many, many roads. The roads that he built opened up southwestern Colorado and were a lot responsible for the development of this area. Okay, he advertised his toll roads. These are ads that appeared in the Ouray newspaper, the Solid Muldoon. There's actually that's the road over Dallas Divide, the Leopard Creek, Marshall Pass, Cochetopa Pass, other roads that he built. Mears, and this is advertising the $1 Million Highway, get you up into the Red Mountain area. Now, Mears Toll Roads. Again, this is a 5'6" tall guy, and never went beyond the 4th grade. He discovered a need of either his own or others to get supplies over. He found investors, including himself. He always put his money into his toll roads. He laid out the road himself. Again, this is a guy with a 4th grade education, wandered over on a horse, generally set the area the road would be, and then he hired skilled and creative men to build it. He paid off his investors and himself with the profits from the road. He treated his workers well, very ahead of his time. Otto owned railroads, toll roads, mines, smelters, etc. Never had a strike. hated unions, but he always treated his men very well. He was often criticized for the condition of his roads. However, that was the norm in the late 19th century. Toll roads were always in bad shape. This is one of my favorite stories. Otto was on his Engineer Pass road, and there was a guy whose wagon had run off the road, tipped over, and he was standing around trying to load stuff back into the wagon, swearing and cussing and saying if he ever could find this Otto Bears guy, he would kill him. So Otto's standing there listening to this, and he says, well, you're in luck. I just passed him about 4 miles away, and he should be here in about 15, 20 minutes, and you can tell him exactly what you think. And then Otto went on his way. There are dozens of stories like that about Otto Bears. Another one of my favorite is the first train over the Rio Grande Southern Railroad south of Telluride. Otto refused to get on it because he was afraid it would fall off the road. So, again, many stories about Otto Bears. Here were the charges. $5 to get from Ouray to Silverton with a single-span wagon, 1 horse. Again, the pay for miners was $3 a day. Ouray to Dallas, $1 for a single-span team. Dallas to Telluride, $2. Here's the Mears Toll Road being upgraded for automobile travel. This is Mount Abram, and this is just south of Ouray, making the road for the first time available for automobiles. In 1883, there were only 2 ways to get in or out of Ouray, and Otto Bears owned the toll road on both routes. Red Mountain Toll Road from Ouray to Silverton, the Montrose to Ouray Toll Road. And for good measure, he also owned a 3rd road up Canyon Creek to the west of Ouray, the Canyon Creek Toll Road. Okay, Red Mountain Pass Toll Road. In 1880, Ouray and San Juan Wagon Road was formed. They tried, they couldn't finish it, they went bankrupt. In 1882, the county took over and spent $42,000, a lot of money in 1882, but again, they failed to complete it. They all knew that Otto could finish it, but they did not want him to finish the road because they knew he would charge exorbitant prices. However, in 1883, Otto bought the Ouray and San Juan Wagon Road, and within 8 months completed the road. And then in 1884, he completed the toll road from the top of Red Mountain Pass down into Silverton. It cost him a lot. It cost over $200,000 in the early 1880s to build that road from Ouray to Silverton, and 1 mile above Ouray, 1 mile section, cost $40,000. So again, those are the charges that he made, exorbitant charges. His toll booth was right here. This is the Bear Creek Falls right here. Very high rugged cliffs around here. So if you wanted to get by the toll booth and you were on foot, you could. You could hike around it, but you couldn't get an animal or a wagon anyway past there. So it was a great place to have the toll road. This is the Mears Toll Road. I don't know what you do when another wagon comes by. I don't know if any of you have done much with horses, but backing a wagon is not a thing you really want to do when it's being pulled by a horse. Okay, in 1889, Ouray bought the toll road, and Otto just whined and whined about how much money he'd lost, and the city didn't pay him enough for the road, etc., etc. Now, why did he sell out so soon? I mean, here was a profitable road. Well, the reason is that he started to build railroads. He lost interest in his toll roads and decided that railroads were the thing of the future. And so he built 3 railroads in the San Juans and bought a 4th. He moved to Washington, D.C. He built a railroad from Washington to Chesapeake Bay. He was down in New Orleans, and he built a railroad down there. In fact, he was in charge of the 1905 Mardi Gras. It's just a fantastic story of his whole life. These are the famous twin bridges on the Mears Toll Road. I'm not really sure that I'd want to cross either one of these. But that's the Mears Toll Road. This is a picture of Ouray, taken from actually the reservoir above the city. This is the road that goes out to the Revenue Mine and the Camp Bird Mine. This is the road to Silverton. This is a 20 to 30% grade right here. Terrible, terrible grade to try to get wagons up out of there. So in 1911, the county decided to improve the road. Here's the original road right here, and they put in a couple switchbacks and made that a lot easier. Here's another view from a different angle. You see those switchbacks. So this was when the road was upgraded. It still is not good for automobile traffic, but you could obviously take wagons over it. This is the first car to get to the top of Red Mountain Town, 8 miles south of Ouray, 1911. You can see they had a few problems. They didn't need a horse. The car actually made it to the top of the pass. Okay, in 1924, the state decided that they needed to make this road for automobiles. So here's that original 20% grade. Here is the switchbacks put in 1911, and here's the road we have today. Oh, I'm sorry, the original road is down here. Okay, so we now have 8% grade coming out of Ouray. Another view of the new switchbacks put in 1924. Okay, the Riverside Slide area, very famous area in Ouray. Whoops. Every winter, the Riverside Slide would cover the road 40 to 50 feet high, and so they tunnel through the snow. And so there are many, many pictures, famous pictures of the snow tunnel at the Riverside Slide area. This is what it looked like after they put in the better road in 1924. These are sandstone guardrails here. People often ask, why aren't there guardrails today on this horrible Red Mountain Pass Road? And the CDOT tells us that they wouldn't be able to throw the snow over if they had those guardrails. And there isn't enough land to be able to put in normal kinds of guardrails. Here's what the Riverside Slide snow shed looked like in 2015. Unfortunately, I didn't get up there last winter when it was so much worse than this. But I will tell you that the last time I was up there before it snowed in November, this area was still 20 feet deep with snow when this year's first snow came. So we're probably going to have a glacier up there in years to come. All right. The Bear Creek Tunnel, built in 1924. This is what it looked like when it was first built. I could tell you who all those people are, but you probably don't care. County commissioners, the surveyor, etc. This is what the tunnel looked like. This is the top is the south end, the bottom is the north end. This is what the south end and the north end look like today. Another just aside, about 8 or 9 years ago, the CDOT approached me and said, we're going to get rid of that tunnel and make this road a lot more safer. And I said, over my dead body, you're going to get rid of that tunnel. It's historic. And so we argued with them, and so that's when they put in the new gunite that they have in the tunnel, and they promised us that they won't take out the tunnel. Very historic. I love the cribbing up here for the Bear Creek Trail. Okay, when the new road was built in 1926, they had a a dedication of the road, and they had a sort of a drape over the dedication sign to Otto Bears. And here's the picture of Otto Bears, and he was too sick to come in 1926, but he came in 1927, and the sign says, in honor of Otto Bears, Pathfinder of the San Juan, who built this road in 1881. So, and that's what it is. Now, it got damaged over the years, and somebody filled the damage with concrete and then put the AN from Juan in there. And when they built the recent road in 2012, we thought, hey, this is a great way to fix this. And so I had the contractors move the plaque from the Red Mountain area over to in front of the museum building. And then we got the city of Ouray to take it to Grand Junction, and we got a stonemason to cut off a sliver off the top of this and use it to repair that section. And then the bridge people came and put the sign back in, and there it is today. So if you go by Bear Creek Falls, stop and take a look at Otto's nicely repaired sign. There have been many bridges at Bear Creek. There's Otto Bears Toll Bridge in 1883. There's the bridge that was put in 1924. Here's the bridge that was put in the 1960s. And then here is the bridge that we have today, put in 2012. And if you've been there, where is it? This is right here. That's what we call the diving board. It's about 20 feet long. You can walk out over and look straight down into Bear Creek Falls. All right, so here we have the Mears Toll Road in the 1890s. Here we have in 1924. And here we have what it looks like today. All right, just a couple more things. It wasn't paved until 1954. Kind of interesting that it lasted that long. So, the $1 Million Highway. In 2013, USA Today listed it as one of the 10 most dangerous roads in the world. In 2015, they listed it as one of the 10 best bucket list roads in the USA. At least they told you first that it was dangerous. Okay, now, what about the name? Where did that name come from? All right, I'll tell you some of my favorites here. Mine waste was used to grade the road, and so there's $1 million worth of gold ore in the road base. That's not true. The scenery is worth $1 million. That's certainly true, but that's not where the name came from. The road cost $1 million. That's coming close to what it was, but that's really not where the name came from. And my favorite, I wouldn't drive that road again for $1 million. People come into the museum in Ouray and they go, oh, I don't know how you can live here. How can you ride that road? You know, so I say, well, when you're back in Topeka, Kansas, and you're driving down the street, do you ever hit parked cars? No. Then why would you drive over the side of Red Mountain Pass? Anyway, so where does the name come from? In 1924, Forest Service representative, Ouray County representative, and CDOT, which was then Colorado Highway Department, they were sitting in a cafe in Ouray, and they had the contracts for building the road from Ouray to the top of Red Mountain Pass. And one of them added them up, and it came to exactly $1 million. So the next day, one of them took a sign, spray painted $1 Million Highway, and stuck it in the ground. And within a year, everyone was calling it the $1 Million Highway. Okay, you can't put together this kind of information without help. The San Juan County Historical Society, wonderful archives down in Silverton. The Ouray County Historical Society, we have in our archives building, we have more than 25,000 documents